Hi guys, this is Leela. Welcome to my channel Leela WebDev. So we have implemented the counter context, it's a simple example, right? So now this one we are able to see that we are trying to send the props into a multiple components. So here we are having counter.jsx, and counter.jsx doesn't use any increment, decrement, reset methods, and it is sending in return sending this one to the counter buttons. So if you try to see here, counter buttons. Now in order to overcome this scenario like props drilling, so we will be using this context API. So how we can implement this context API in this one, let's try to see. And also the commonly used pattern with using the custom hook and all those things, how we can implement it, I will try to show you. So here if you try to see in this one app.jsx, right? So in order to create this one, so what we can do it is, so here we need to create a context. So here I will be creating, so now this one is related to the counter, right? Counter context. So I will be creating it like something like counter context.js. So this is our JS file, and here so we will be creating a context. So that is nothing but context counter context is equal to create context. Okay, we need to create the context. By default, if you want to mention any default values, you can mention it, or otherwise you can mention it as a null. So this is our counter context. Now what we are able to see, so we have created a create context, right? Now let's go to the app.jsx file. So now here we need to use the context thing. So in order to use this context, what I need to do, so here I can create so there is no need to create anything, and here we need to provide counter context only. So here we are not exporting. Okay, we need to export. So export constant, I am exporting this counter context. Now for this one counter context, so we are not getting, why we are not getting, so I think counter context. Okay, let's import this counter context. Import from counter context, and here it needs to be imported counter context. So okay, we have created with a short name. Okay, we'll have it like that only. Counter context dot provider. So we are providing the details. So here also we need to write in such a way that counter context dot provider. So we have written it like this. Now we need to provide the values. So whatever the things we required here, we need to provide the values. The things which we are trying to send it as a props is count, increment, decrement, and reset, right? Okay, let's try to have a values something like this, an object, and we need to send the count, increment, and we need to send the decrement, and the last one is the reset. So we are sending these values. So here you will be having an attribute that is nothing but value is equal to, we will be sending this like this. Now we are sending the provider context provider, and now whatever the values are there in this one, so whatever the components declared in this one, so you can directly use those all things. So here I will be removing this one all. So in the counter, let's go to the counter. Now we are not sending any props. Here we need to use the prop, you need to use the context. So in order to use this one, so context, so here I can write is equal to use context. So we need to use the hook use context, and here you need to write the which context I need to use. So we have created the counter context, right? Counter context, that's it. And now here in this one, what is the variable we are trying to use it? That is nothing but count. So I can use this count, and in this counter buttons there is no need to mention these all values. And now let's go to the counter buttons, and here so we need to use the increment, decrement, and the reset. So okay, let's try to remove these all props. Now here also we will be using constant is equal to use context of counter context. We need to use the counter context. I am using this counter context, and here I need to write in such a way that increment, decrement, and the reset. So we are using these three things. That's it. So now we have implemented this counter.jsx, and here we need to write constant. So now we have implemented the same thing. Now if you try to see the output, see the same output I am able to produce it, but this time we are using the context API. Now we are not sending any what I want to say is we are not sending any props to any component. So we are just directly sending it to the context, and we are using it. Now here what we have did it in our counter context.js. So here we have created a context, and in this one we are doing this context provider, so for which values we need to send it. Here we are providing the context provider, and we are sending all the values whichever is necessary for this one. And here in our counter context, in our counter buttons, so we are using this use context hook in order to get these all the values. In counter.jsx also we are using the use context. So this is how we will be implementing the use context. Normally in the real-time scenarios, if you have doubt, so in real-time scenarios, how we will be implementing this one is, so we will implement in a different way. So using the custom provider and also a custom hook, we will create the context and we will do it. I will try to show you that scenario also. So this is our counter context.js, right? So let's try to rename with a JSX thing. So why? Because we will create a component here, that is our custom hook. So here I will be creating this custom hook. Now here what I will try to do is, so here export constant counter context. Okay, so this is the thing, and there is no need to export this one. Why? Because so create context we will be using it here only. And counter context, what I will try to do, so this is a method, and here you will be getting the props, that is nothing but the children. So we will take the children, and here I will be writing that context provider. So here I will be writing context counter context dot provider, and here we need to send the values. Okay, let's try to send these all the values. So here you will be having these are all the things. Okay, and in this one I will write the children. So this is our thing, and I need to return this value. So return this one. So this is our custom hook, and now what I will try to do, instead of using this one counter context, and let's go to the app.jsx, and here there is no need to use this counter context. Why? Because it will not be available. And here I can wrap this one with the counter context here like this. So here also I will wrap this one, and whatever the data is there inside this one, it will be sent. Now here I will send it. Now this these all the values or these all the methods and all those things is related to this context. So what can I do? I can copy these all the things. I can remove this one from the app. So there is no need for us, right? Why? Because these are all related to the context. Let's go to the count, and here let's create this all the things custom hook. Now this use state should be imported from the React. That's it. And these values we need to send it to here. So value is equal to values. That's it. Finish. Now we got this in our app.js counter context. So here we are showing it. And now if I refresh this page, now we got some error. Let's see what could be this issue. Okay, we are using this counter.jsx, these all the things, right? So here we are using this use context, counter context. So let's try to export this one also for the time being, let's say. And now hopefully we should be able to see the output. Yeah. Now if I click here, then also I'm able to see the output. Now we have removed all the content to the counter context. Now I don't want to expose this one. Why? Because in the counter.js I'm using this use context, and here also I'm using this use context and counter context is all the things we are using it, right? And here I can create a something like export constant counter or otherwise custom use counter. I will create it like this, and here this is our thing, and here what I will try to do is constant context is equal to create context, use context not use counter, use context, use context only, use context of counter context, right? So we need to use this counter context. So where is this one? So this is the thing we need to use it. And here what I can do is I can remove this one, and counter context provider counter context, and this one is the context. We will see, or otherwise we'll keep it like this only. Why? Because these both are looking context. Here instead of having this one, we need to create something like counter provider. Okay, this one will be very nice. Now here we will be having use context, and we will return this context. Return this context. I will return this context. Now there is no need for us to export this one. Counter provider is there in our app.js. So here I can write it something like counter provider. Okay, and here also I will write counter provider, and yeah, so let's import this counter provider. Now what I want to do is, so counter text, this one is completed, use counter is completed, and we are having these all things. And now there is no need for us this context thing. I can remove this context thing, and here instead of using this one, I can use the use counter directly. Use counter. That's it. So now I can remove this one, and there is no need for us to use this use context also, and I can remove this one also. And here also in our counter buttons, I can remove this one, and I can use this instead of using this use context, use counter. That's it. Now here also I can remove this context thing, and also I can remove this import, and also I can remove this use counter. That's it. Now if you try to see the output, then also we will be able to see the same output. It will work fine. So in real time scenario, you will be using it like this. Now it looks very simple. So this counter context has its own data, and here we are using. So if whenever you want to use it, so directly you can use this counter provider, and wherever you want this one, use counter, and also here also you can use this use counter. And there is nowhere we are using this context API, use context provider. These all things we are not using. Directly we are using in our main file. This is nothing but counter context. So like this, we will be creating the context API. This is the advanced pattern which we will be using in the React.js. So what I will try to do is I will commit this entire code in our video-134, and here I will commit this entire code. Okay, this is nothing but the context provider and use context thing. So whoever may be having doubts or anything, so if they want to refer this code, so it is provided in the description below, the link. So you can clone the code and you can check it. And if you have any doubts or any suggestions, please post the comments below to this video. And if you like this video, please do support me by subscribing to my channel. Thank you.